There you go. You're all set.
There you go. Well, it's still loading on my screen, but the Zoom does say that. Yeah, okay.
All righty. Well, good luck, everyone. I will see you in a bit. Good luck, Claudia.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone.
You still have a couple of minutes. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's wait for people. Um, we're already live, so
well, you can chat about some things. Like I said, ballet has, I honestly think it became my stress relief living where we live. I would still love to take classes. And it's one of the things that as we age, it's one of the reasons why I'm in such good shape.
absolutely. It's the best exercise for me, for sure. I think I'm not a gym person. I actually go to the studio.
Is
Just
it nighttime where you're at? Or what?
no, I just have a light.
Mm,
Very bright. And that's actually my apartment is very, very dark.
mm.
Um,
One more minute.
all right, welcome everyone. Let's give one more minute for people to just continue to come in. And please let me know if you can hear me well, if you see my screen. You can just let me know on the chat, um, or just talk. Please feel free to interrupt me with questions, but I'm going to give space for questions at the end. Hopefully, we don't go over time. There's a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover today. Oh, thank you for letting me know that the audio is great. Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Jen and Joanne. All right. So let's start. Welcome to a global history of ballet, and with the caveat that this is going to be a very, very quick overview, just because I was telling Kate a few minutes ago, I can definitely teach each of the time periods separately because there's so much in each and every one of those. And yeah, so let's start. First, I want to give the objectives here. I have three goals for you guys. The first one is to understand where ballet originated and how it developed in different parts of the world. Um, this is going to be, again, a very quick historical overview. Uh, and just because, again, I feel like I can teach every time period separately. My second objective is to inspire you to attend your next ballet performance in your local ballet companies with a deeper appreciation for what you're watching. One of the things that I tell ballet students when I was teaching is that, how can you dance without an understanding of the history? Like, have you ever wondered where all the steps you're learning today in the studio, have you ever wondered where they come from? Or where the ballet Swan Lake originated? So there's a whole history there that even as an audience member, you can appreciate it so much more if you understand the history. Um, and third, encourage you to try a ballet class or a dance class of any style. And of course, support your local ballet companies and local ballet schools. We'll talk a little bit more in the end about the state of ballet today. And I have a few action items for you so you can then get more involved in with the art form. And I didn't introduce myself actually, and I had this in the agenda, but I keep forgetting what to do. So my name is Claudia, and I am a PhD student in history at the University of Florida, and I am a former professional ballet dancer. I don't like to use the word former too much because I keep dancing. So I would say I am out of the business for now because I am concentrating on my PhD. But I used to balance academics and ballet for at least 3 years before my PhD. So and of course, my dissertation will be about history of ballet, one of the topics. So let's continue. Now, I want to hear from you, and you can put this in the chat very, very quickly. I just want to read the room. Um, when you hear the word ballet, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It can be literally anything. It can be tutus, pain. Yes, Mikhail Baryshnikov, thank you. Elegant, beauty, discipline, graceful. Yes. On point, yes, that's right. And all of these are accurate. Art, strength, yes. Relaxing, I love that, Tanisha. Just it relaxes me to dance for sure. I mean, it's hard, but is I think I was telling Joangeli before, is the only exercise that makes me happy. I'm not a gym person just because I danced for so many years. And plie, yes, plie is one of the steps. Thank you, everyone. And please feel free to continue putting the first thing that comes to mind on the chat. Second, and well, this is yours truly in the pictures. So I was very, very young there. Second thing I would love to know is what is your exposure? What was your experience? Did you take a ballet class when you were very, very young? Did you actually dance as a teenager? Were you part of a dance team? Anything. I would love to know. Um, because at the end, I'm going to encourage you to continue with that practice. I took ballet classes when I was a kid. I had a minor in dance. Yes, Joanne, I found that out a few minutes ago from you. Great. And university dance minors are um, getting stronger and stronger. Those programs are getting really good. As a child between 5 and 11, sporadic dances as an adult, but I went weekly from the first 6 months of this year. Amazing, Jen, amazing. I'm very happy. I have seen several performances. I was a dance minor at the Performing Arts School. Oh, amazing. I took adult ballet classes. Amazing, Jess. Thanks for sharing. And someone on the YouTube live says that, oh, mom was a ballerina for 20 years. I know this person. I know who is watching. Thanks, Joe. Did ballet age 8 to 18, was in a studio company. Amazing, guys. Just keep the conversation going. I want to keep the chat alive, and please feel free to put any questions there as we go. Right, so this is a very simple way to put like kind of the whole timeline of the history of ballet. It all started with the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century, and of course it continues and is a very, very different, like, of course it looks like the opposite of how it looked in like the 1400s and 1600s in Europe, and now it's a whole athletic career. So we will go from the very beginning until today, and we'll see how it transforms. And you see this kind of weird line over here is because during these centuries, the formalization of the seven ballet schools it was developing. So I'm at the end, I'm going to show you, this is not, the ballet is not just about the professionals, but it's also about how you educate the kids. into the art form and how you make them professional. And if I had an opportunity to have a second dissertation, it would be about the ballet schools, but that's going to be a massive project. So maybe a second book. um, as I continue, in my academic career, I would love to do a project about the 7 dance schools. So the beginnings. So I don't know if you have um, kind of wonder where ballet came from, but because the steps are in French, a lot of people kind of have this misconception. I don't know if to call it a misconception really, that ballet actually did not originate in France, but in Italy. So, of course, this comes from the very late medieval aristocracy, and dancing was a way to, of course, entertain. Um, but it all got a little bit more codified with the first known dance master called Domenico da Piacenza. And of course, please, my pronunciations are going to be horrible unless they are in Spanish in this presentation. So apologies in advance. Why do we know that he was kind of the first dance master? There might have been people before, but we know this because there is a codified book. And here you can see kind of the movements and patterns that he was planning with the dances. And there is a whole branch of study that, they study these codifications. And there's a lot of types of codifications. So I'm not an expert in any of those, but it will be very cool to study those one day. So we do know that he was the first dance master because of this book. But knowledge was transferred from dance master to dancers or dance masters to students. And you can probably argue today that that is how ballet students learn. They learn mouth to mouth versus just reading a book or watching a video because ballet is very physical. They need to kind of, correct you as you go. But this whole tradition started in the 15th century Italian Renaissance. So how did it get to France? Well, we have this marriage of Catherine de' Medici with the then prince Henri II of France. He will become king, of course, and she will be known as the Italian Queen of France. And she brought this tradition to the French courts. And most importantly, she made it a little bit more professional. People in the court did these dances more regularly, more, let's say, formally, if that makes sense. And it was developed into kind of a professional or a profession. You were a dancer in the court. And these dancers were called ballet de cour or dances of the court. And they developed into the Ballet Comique de la Reine or the Ballet Comique of the Queen. Um, and I don't know, there's a few things about the origins of the word ballet, but it is said that the word came from the Italians called them balletis or little dances, and the French call them ballets. So that's how the word kind of started to be used. And it was, again, education, entertainment for the court, but also a little bit of education. And this will be much, much more formalized with another king that we will see very soon who it is. So the ballets look a little bit like this. The elevated theaters that we know today did not exist. So that elevated platform didn't come until a few decades later. So all the ballets were kind of like the audience was surrounding the dancers, and it was all performed in the middle. And of course, we see people here in some balconies, and there's probably some props here, but this is how historians predict that ballets were looking like. So If there are any early modernists who are watching this lecture, you of course recognize this king. He is the famous Louis XIV. And a lot of people do not know that Louis himself was a dancer. So his nickname was the Sun King. And everybody, oh yeah, the Sun King and the Sun King. I'm like, well, why did he call himself the Sun King? Because it was from a ballet. In this painting, this portrait, he was actually performing the role of the god Apollo, um, and he was dancing. So this is a whole costume, and this is my opportunity to say that l'état c'est moi, or the state is me, also included dance. So ballet, along with fencing and equestrianism, were codified into what it would be kind of a system of etiquette. So if you wanted to know how to behave in Louis's court, you needed to be educated in one of these, or like in this program of ballet, fencing, and equestrianism. There's so much more in there. But I don't know if you know, but in fencing, the kind of movements are also in French. So this is where we get the codification of dance itself. We get the codification for fencing. I'm not very familiar with the equestrian part of it, but I'm sure Kaylin will let us know after, or anybody who was an equestrian before. And like I said, it was all about court etiquette, but also an image of power. So if you knew these codes, you knew how to behave in front of the king, in front of whoever else, or whatever positions in the court, even the distance you needed to have when bowing to the king and saying hello, for example. So it was all very, very specific. And again, Louis was a dancer himself. It became so big that he founded the first dance school, and it still stands today. It was called the Académie Royale de Danse, and we can see here the primary source of it. But today it is the Ballet School of the Opera de Paris. So it still exists, but with a very, very different kind of image. And of course, this is where we start seeing the elevated theaters. So with him, we start to see the elevated platform and the audience kind of down below, where they can have a much more kind of a better view, basically. And the ballets used to last all night. It was a whole celebration that lasted, yes, all night. So this ballet, I'm forgetting the name of this ballet where Apollo appears, but basically, yeah, lasted the whole night. So you needed to have, stamina to watch these ballets. And very quickly, this custom, because of Louis, this custom started to spread. Of course, absolutist monarchies adopted a lot of what Louis was doing, and one of these things was ballet. But in Italy, opera was also starting to be very, very popular. So they started to incorporate ballets in operas. So a few of the performances you'll probably see in an opera some ballet dancers. And ballet was a little bit kind of like auxiliary or secondary, because the opera singers were, of course, in front. But then there is a moment where, and we will see in the 19th century, where they definitely separate, and then you can attend an opera performance or a ballet performance. I think most importantly, story ballets became to be more popular. What is a story ballet? Basically, it's a ballet that tells a story. Um, and because of this, we needed a way to kind of speak to the audience and tell them the story without actually being a theater performance, without having a script. So what did they do? They codified what is called pantomime or mime, pantomime. I call it pantomime. And the person who wrote this codification was called Jean-Georges Noverre. And here we also have the primary source. One day I will look at these primary sources and actually read them. It'll be very exciting. But then, well, actually, I have another thing to say, but later. This is a very basic pantomime image or graphic where you can see a few of the things that, if you see a ballet dancer having a conversation with their hands, having all these signs, it is because they're saying something. So all of us ballet dancers learn these mimes depending on what ballet we're doing. So I think the best one to watch for a mime is Sleeping Beauty, where Cara Boss, or you know her as Maleficent, is actually performing the curse. So she speaks to the audience and she speaks to everybody in the performance how the curse works. So yeah, it's very long. It's a very long pantomime. I have done it before for a ballet school. I was the Maleficent or the Caraboss, and I remember being very nervous because I needed to be very specific with all my hands, with my face, because the audience needs to understand what I'm saying. So yes, this is a very, very quick graphic, but I promise I can share this with you so you kind of know. And I am actually working to create like a PDF with a few resources so you can kind of understand, because explaining everything, it's without a visual, we will be here for a week if I include the visuals today. So let's move on. So many of you know that the 19th century brought Romanticism, or this movement in art where people were romanticizing their lives. Basically, please, art historians, you're going to kill me, but this is the most simple way I can explain it. And this period coincided with the rise of the ballerina. So from the beginning, from the Italian Renaissance to kind of the 18th century, we mostly see men being the main performers here. And if they were, I probably said that women were the partners there, but with Louis XIV, it was mostly men doing all of this stuff. Rarely you saw a woman performing on stage. And if there were men, they were kind of dressing like women. And I think Shakespearean plays were also like that. But the French Revolution kind of changed these perspectives. They saw men as, the ancient regime's kind of legacy was like, no, that is, it's ridiculous to have men performing in the arts. So it was a very complicated issue there that eventually the males became the partners or the supporters of women. And because of Romanticism, the ballets that were created were mainly with the topics of, a ballet being imaginative, unreal, ethereal. So we see a lot of fairies, we see a lot of ghost stories, we see a lot of forest with like mythical creatures in these ballets, and this is all because of Romanticism. And in this period is where we see the appearance of the point shoe. I think, Jess, you said the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word ballet is on point. And it was thanks to Marie Taglioni, or actually her dad, who created these shoes because she was going to perform a ballet called La Sylphide, which is a ballet about a sylph or a fairy-like creature meeting a man. And in order to create an effect that she was floating, they used smoke, lights, and the point shoes. So people were like, oh my God, she's actually flying. She's actually um, supernatural. And it was all because of these things that Filippo Taglioni, who was Mary's father, created for her. And of course, they look immensely different from what they look now. You don't have a hard box where she can stand in her toes for a long period of time. Actually, she was just rising and going down, rising and going down. So they look very different. I will die if I actually wear these point shoes because they don't have a flexible sole. Like there's a few things I can um, correct here or compare with like the modern point shoe, but I'm pretty sure you can go to the National Library of France and actually take a look at these. Or they are in a museum somewhere and you can actually see Taglioni's shoes. Um, and then in Denmark, we also have this guy whose name was August Bournonville. And he was also getting very, very inspired from these ethereal or romantic themes. And he traveled a lot. He traveled to Scotland, he traveled to Italy, mostly those two countries, and he got inspired to create stories. So with his ballets, we have the development of the Danish style. It is said that in Denmark, the theaters were a little bit smaller and narrower. So Bournonville was like, don't use the arms too much. So if you see kind of a Danish choreography, you mostly see the arms are not moving. They're kind of here. They use the torso a lot, so they don't slap the neighbors. And they jumped a lot. And actually, Bournonville, this is something I didn't put in the slide here. He was a person who said, well, women and men shouldn't be that separate in the performance. Actually, women, I think, should do as much as the men can do. So you see a lot of the women's steps here being almost the same as the men. It's really hard to perform a Bournonville ballet. Actually, wearing hard point shoes is kind of a bad idea because your feet are going to get really tired from trying to jump. There's a lot of jumps in his performances. Um, and again, the small stages thing, I think, is a myth, but I'll need to check with whoever ballet historian is actually doing research on Bournonville because I would love to know if this is true. And it will make sense if they cannot slap their neighbors and use, big arms and everything's like it's in the torso and the arms do not move that much. So after every period of time, I will recommend a few ballets for you that you can go watch, or if your local ballet company is performing one of these ballets, you will know that at least these four, are coming from this period of time. So La Fille Margardet is very widely performed by the Royal Ballet of London because we'll see a little bit later a British choreographer revamped the ballet. Giselle is my favorite ballet of all time, and it's a ghost story, but it's amazing. It's a love story, a tragedy, and I highly recommend it. A lot of companies perform this. La Sylphide, again, it was Marie Taglioni. This is actually her portrait here, who performed the first La Sylphide, but that first version is lost. And then we have Bournonville's version still standing today. So La Sylphide, highly recommend. There's a few companies that still perform it. And then the Grand Pas de Quatre was, not many people perform it. It was just an opportunity in 1845 to bring the four main ballerinas of all time. Mari Taglioni is here. Fanny Cerrito is here, who was the first Giselle. Um, Carlota, no, sorry, Fanny Charrito was the first Esmeralda. Carlota Grisi was the first Giselle. And then Lucille Graham, here behind Taglioni, was one of Bournonville's most celebrated students. So it was an opportunity to bring the four of them together. It was a whole thing, whole celebration, and one of my favorite pieces. So moving on, late 19th century. Ballet in Russia, because you will hear that in Russia, ballet is huge. And it was not really until Catherine the Great that ballet actually became a thing in Russia. Um, of course, the Tsar Peter the Great, very, very inspired by westernizing Russia, wanted to bring a little bit of this, but it wasn't really until Catherine the Great that we really get performers there and the theaters and everything. It was the French ballet master Jean-Baptiste Landais who brought ballet to Russia, but it wasn't until the very late 19th century that we get the French ballet master Marius Petipa work with the imperial ballets of Russia that were in St. Petersburg. They were a very, very high class thing. Only aristocracy could go. Of course, if you know, Russia was, I think, 80 to 90% a peasant country. So there was a very, very few group of people who can actually watch the ballet. And Marius Petipa collaborated with Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, and of course, this might sound very familiar, to create the classics we see today. Unfortunately, we have a lot of cultural appropriation in these ballets. And of course, this is something that the 21st century brought to attention. And you'll see why when I tell you what ballets you can watch from this era. But yeah, all the classics are from this era. So here, Petit ballets are also known as the Russian Imperial ballets, but also known as the ones you will probably see the most. So you can thank Petipa and Tchaikovsky for creating your Nutcracker tradition for every holiday season. Swan Lake, absolutely. And actually, Swan Lake was not received very well in terms of the music at first. And it wasn't until Petipa came to the picture, because Tchaikovsky composed the score and then Petipa, like it failed. Nobody liked it. Petipa then comes to the picture and then it is way more popular. And for Swan Lake, Petipa also collaborated with a Russian choreographer called Lev Ivanov. So a few of these ballets are actually a collaboration between Tchaikovsky, Ivanov, and Petipa. The Sleeping Beauty, of course, also a classic. And I told you the pantomime kind of one of the biggest pantomimes in the history of ballet. It comes from Sleeping Beauty. And then there's also another collaboration with another choreographer called Ludwig Minkus, where we get the Don Quixotes. Or there's also a ballet called La Bayadère. It's amazing music. However, again, cultural appropriation. And why do I say cultural appropriation? I don't know if you know, but the Nutcracker and actually Swan Lake too, they have a Spanish dance, a Chinese dance, Arabian dance, and Swan Lake also has Neapolitan dance, like a different dances of the world. And it was very like stereotypical thing for them to, put the dance steps and the music are clearly cultural appropriation, of course. But they didn't know at the time. It was not a thing that was in conversations. So you will see a lot of ballet companies today actually changing the theme of these little dances because it's not appropriate to perform them anymore with that label of Chinese, Arabian, Spanish, etc. Um, so the ballet rules. This is one of my favorite periods of time. There was this impresario called Sergei Diaghilev who did not dance, but he had a lot of money. He was born in Perm, Russia, and he loved to watch ballet. So he decided to invest in a ballet company formed by the best of the best. So he actually recruited whoever was a star in Russia, like the best ballet dancers, um, the best teachers. We'll see here Enrico Cecchetti, who is one of the Italian ballet masters, actually codifying a school training these dancers. Um, but this is very close to the Russian Revolution, so he said, let's make our headquarters be Paris because Paris is where it's at. And if you know anything about 1910 to 1920s Paris, it makes sense that he really wanted to be there. However, he made this company a touring company. So the ballet rules actually brought ballet to England, to North and South America, to Asia, etc., etc. So ballet rules is the reason why a lot of other regions in the world know of ballet and really wanted to kind of have their own ballet companies, ballet schools, etc. So the ballets were a little bit different. They were not the classical point shoes, tutus thing they were, but he actually invested a little bit more in modern choreographies, modern dancers. And of course, some of them were a scandal. They were like, no, we didn't pay for this to watch this. Like, we came here to see a ballet. What is this? So this is really the first signs that ballet is actually moving to kind of more of a modern type of movement. We're moving away from the codified, classical Louis XIV and then Russian style. We really want to go out there. And I have Pablo Picasso and Coco Chanel here because actually Sergei Diaghilev hired Pablo Picasso to make some of the sets and Coco Chanel to make some of the costumes. So it was really more than a ballet company. It was really like the best of the best in art. Really, really interesting here. Um, a caveat and a however here, there is a lot of ballets that have or are based on exoticism, Orientalism, and even a little bit of blackface. Um, Again, a lot of companies are changing this. They're changing the costumes, they're changing the ways in which we see these choreographies because it's not appropriate anymore to perform like this. But in that time, it was very exotic, it was the thing to watch. The ballets that are from this era are also mostly collaboration with Igor Stravinsky, one of my favorite composers. So you will see the three main Stravinsky ballets are Petrushka, The Rite of Spring, and Firebird. They're short ballets, they're usually like half an hour. You will never see them as like a whole evening kind of thing. You always see them kind of put in the same program. You can watch all of them in the same night. The Dying Swan was Anna Pavlova solo, really short. And Anna Pavlova was one of those people who, perform all over the world, and she brought ballet everywhere. And you see the Rite of Spring is very unusual. This is, we have a ballerina here, and then we have modern dancers. So people actually hated the Rite of Spring. Um, and this is Vaslav Nijinsky, who was the choreographer of the Rite of Spring. And unfortunately, he died. He was schizophrenic. So there's a whole, again, I can teach these periods of time separately. I get really excited with the Ballet Russe. Now, I don't know if you are in the US, you have probably heard about George Balanchine. And he was actually Georgian, and he studied in Russia. When he was very young, he witnessed the Russian Revolution, and then he became one of the dancers and choreographers of the Ballet Russe. This is where he actually started his career. Actually, the ballet, I think Apollo was one of those that he performed with the Ballet Russe. Um, so he escaped the Russian Revolution. He actually decided to leave Europe and he took off to the United States, where he actually found dancers that were more into musical theater and jazz. Of course, it makes sense. So he decided to create his own style. He wanted to rebel from all these Russian kind of like he went a step over the ballet rules. He was like saying no, no to story ballets. I want all my ballets to be plotless. That his ballets don't really have a story to tell. It's just your own interpretation. He decided to further collaborate with Igor Stravinsky, and there's a lot of ballets that are Balanchine Stravinsky. And he was very, very fond of music. So if you are a Balanchine dancer, you are exceptionally musical because there's a step for every single note of music. It's incredible. Balanchine dancers dance really, really fast, and they're just amazing. So you will find them in the New York City Ballet, which is the company he founded. And actually, the Balanchine Trust is kind of it's a organization that protects his ballet like copyrights. So actually, you cannot perform a Balanchine ballet without paying the Balanchine Trust a lot of money, and they will bring someone from New York or someone who was in sorry, there's a disturbance here. Um, I'm sorry, my neighbors are going crazy. So you need to pay the Balanchine Trust to actually perform these ballets. What are some of the ballets that you can watch from Balanchine? There's Jewels, there's Serenade or Serenade, The Four Temperaments, and Agon or Agon. Actually, something that I didn't say before is that Balanchine actually I think he was the first one, but he put a black dancer on stage. He was one of the first ones who was like, listen, he has talent. There's no reason why he cannot go on stage. His ballet is going to be with him. Like this ballet is going to be with him. So he was one of the first choreographers that actually pushed for a little bit of diversity there in a very difficult time for the United States. I'm going to move a little faster now because we're running out of time, or, we have 20 minutes. We still have a lot of ground to cover. So while Balanchine was in the US, we had a lot of development in England, in London. So Madame Ninette de Valois was one of the ones she's actually the founder of the Royal Academy of Dance, you will say of the Royal Ballet School. I love the Royal Ballet. It's one of my favorite ballet company. It is my favorite ballet company. However, I don't know much about Madame Ninette de Valois. I think I should know more. But she was the one founding ballet there. The Royal Ballet was actually interrupted by World War II. They had to close the Royal Opera House and they had to perform in different places while the war was going. But after that, the Royal Opera House opened. And actually, after World War II is where we see the Royal Ballet taking float, like actually being more and more popular. The two main British choreographers who people say are making a little bit of competition with George Balanchine were Sir Kenneth Macmillan and Sir Frederick Ashton. And they're the ones who really, really founded the English style of dance with their ballets. And the ballets were more of human stories. They were not very like fairy tales or, the ethereal romantic ballets were actually ballets that had a lot more of like human stories and actually based in history. And they had at least Sir Kenneth Macmillan had a lot of Shakespeare adaptations, and Sir Frederick Ashton also has a Shakespeare adaptation. So if you want to watch Romeo and Juliet, the Sir Kenneth Macmillan version is the most prominent one. And again, the Royal Ballet School was founded and it was actually based on Italian, Russian, and French styles. So there's a lot of interconnectedness here with ballet. And yeah, it is always very global because there's always transnational exchanges here. These are the biggest British ballets you can see. Again, Macmillan's Romeo and Juliet, Ashton's The Dream, which is Midsummer's Night Dream. Ashton's Cinderella. I told you that there was not many fairy tales, but actually Ashton's Cinderella is one of the biggest ones out there. And Manon from Sir Kenneth Macmillan. This is an amazing ballet. It's a tragedy. It will make you cry. But these are performed around the world, really. Of course, I think you will have to pay a little bit of, copyright royalties to the Royal Ballet, but they're not as hard as balancing in terms of copyright issues. Of course, they bring choreographers, but these are performed more widely. Now, this is my time period actually that I study for my dissertation. Soviet ballet. I think Russian ballet really, really, really takes off after the Russian Revolution just because the Soviet state made it very clear that they didn't want, they wanted their company to be state funded. So they actually founded a very rigorous ballet school. One of the teachers was Agrippina Vaganova. And they also kind of changed the image of ballet to be for the people. It's a communist state, so ballet needs to also represent the people, the revolution, and they sponsored a lot of ballets that were depicting revolutionary symbols, soldiers, achieving a revolution. There was a lot there, but they also kept the classics alive. So all the Swan Lakes and all that, it stayed. And this is one of the biggest Soviet dancers, celebrated Soviet dancers, Maya Plisetskaya. And here are Mikhail Baryshnikov and Natalia Makarova, who defected. So defection was a big thing, and this is actually the theme of my dissertation. And yeah, it's so interesting because they wanted to mix ballet and politics, but the dancers were saying, we're not political at all. What do you mean? Like when they were interviewed in the US, they were asked if they were communists, and they were like, no, I just want to dance. I really just want to dance. So that's Soviet ballet for you. And here are some of the ballets that came from that period. I think the previous slide I said, well, they also kind of kept some Russian folklore there. So the Legend of Love and Fountain of Bakashi Sarai, oh my God, are kind of Russian folk tales, but they mostly focused on, yes, as a mean of propaganda, Raja, very good. Yes, it was a mean of propaganda for sure. Flames of Paris and Spartacus are not based in the Russian Revolution, but this is based in the French one, and this is based on like a slave in Roman times who actually had a rebellion. So you see, there's a theme here. There's a theme here. And these ballets are widely performed in Russia, by the way. They're still performed. And this is also a theme of my dissertation in Cuba. A lot of ballet history books do not mention Cuba in their timeline. And growing up in Latin America, I was like, why is Cuba not here in the history books? Because most history of ballet in Cuba is actually written by Cubans because they also have a tight socialist regime that they just approved certain histories to go out there, right? So Alicia Alonso, who is pictured here, was actually a dancer in the United States. And she decided, well, born in Cuba, born and trained in Cuba, but she danced professionally in the United States. And then when the Cuban Revolution in 1959 happened, she decided to come back and she wanted to found, for the longest time, a national ballet company in Cuba. And actually, Fidel Castro just, it is said, again, I have to check my sources, but this is what historians agree. Fidel Castro actually asked her, how much do you need for the ballet, National Ballet Company? And, they agreed on something, and it's also a state-funded company. But Alicia had her husband, Fernando Alonso, and her brother-in-law, Alberto Alonso. The three of them actually, when this whole founding of the company happened, they also found a ballet school, which was based on the Soviet model. And but it is based on the Soviet model institutionally, but artistically, or how they were educating the kids, was entirely different. They actually founded the Cuban style. They said, our Latino kids cannot be trained the same as the Russian kids because they don't have the same body structure. So they revamped the whole technique and they developed a Cuban style, which is really, really strong, actually. And this is what I'm studying in my dissertation. They toured a lot to like Soviet-friendly countries. And you barely had defection until the Soviet Union fell. And in the 90s is where you see a lot of Cuban dancers actually taking advantage of the tours, international tours, to get out of Cuba because it was really, really hard. It's still very hard to leave Cuba if they wanted to have a different kind of career. And again, they had a lot of revolutionary stuff as well in their ballet repertoire, but they also maintained the classics. Actually, Alicia Alonso was very famous for her Giselle. And these are some of the Cuban ballets you can see out there. You'll see these mainly performed in Latin America because Cuba was very, very prominent in Latin America for sure, but these are some of the ones that you will see. Tarde en la Siesta and Canto Vital these are for women, these are for men, really good ballets. Muñecos is very difficult and it's just a pas de deux or just a man and a woman. And then the ballet Carmen by Alberto Alonso was actually made as a cultural exchange with the Soviets for Maya Plisetskaya, and then he brought that version to Alicia Alonso, and she created her own kind of style for the Carmen suite. It's not the whole ballet Carmen, but it's just a short version. And I promise this is the last thing I'm going to highlight before we go to questions. It's a lot of ground to cover as I expected. So in this whole time period, or like timeline, let's say, we see the development of the styles. I was telling you that, oh yeah, these ballets were created by the English, by the French, or the Russians. But how you train the kids to be able to perform those ballets was also very important. So even today, it really matters where you go to ballet school or who your teacher is. If your teacher is based on the French style, the Danish style, the Italian style, the Russian style, Cuban, etc., etc., it really matters how you will become for your future. For example, my teachers at first my first ballet school was based in the Cuban style, just because I grew up in Latin America. But then I changed to a Vaganova school, which was based on the Russian style. And actually, my teacher is from Bulgaria, and he studied in what was Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. So he was definitely a Vaganova teacher. And then my ballet company, my first ballet company actually is has a Vaganova school attached to it here in the United States, and he's Russian. So it really matters where you are trained. The Balanchine boys and girls go to New York just for that. Just they really want to go to New York City Ballet, you have to go to the School of American Ballet in New York. And Katarina said, you tried a balancing class? Nope, nope. Yes, they're so hard. They're really hard. And again, I can make a whole lecture for balancing. Is so different. But yes, it's really important for you to know the schools. Oh, ballet today. So more than ever, now we cover the whole 20th century mostly, but also, from the 1400s to the 1900s, you saw the development of that. But how does it look today? This is actually my favorite dancer, Stephen McRae, and he's dancing Manon, or I think Meyerling, sorry, from Kenneth Macmillan with American dancer Sarah Lamb, and these are dancers from the Royal Ballet. You see here a lot of athleticism. They're athletes more than artists. So the health of the dancers, thankfully and finally, is being taken care of more than ever before. Dancers can not only perform classical dance ballets, but they can also perform modern, contemporary. There's a lot of versatility in today's ballet companies. It's really hard to find a company that only performs classical ballet. Perhaps the exception is the Mariinsky Ballet and the Bolshoi Ballet are very, very classical. They just perform ballets, but here and there they have some neoclassical stuff going on. Being in a ballet company is basically, this is your 9 to 5. Actually, they have 12-hour workdays or more because they have their ballet class, they have their rehearsals, and then they have a break to perform. Actually, the New York City Ballet, just to give you an example, when they're in the Nutcracker, they perform from Tuesday to Sunday, sometimes 2 performances a day. From Thanksgiving to like January. So we're talking like more than 50 performances of the Nutcracker. And they dance with only Monday off. So it's a lot of work. It takes a long time to get into a ballet company. And just as something that still ballet is working on, there's a lot more diversity in terms of race, in terms of body or like physicality of the dancers. However, there's still a long way to go. There's not enough diversity and not enough diversity in body physicality still. I can definitely have another lecture talking about ballet in the 21st century, but people argue that there's a lot more that diversity in terms of race, gender, and physical body structure. But really, ballet companies are still a little bit traditional. So it's really, if you don't look a certain way, it's really hard to get into the company, even you standing in the room for the audition. So there's still a long way to go on that. That's kind of a sad note here, but what can you do to get involved? Support your local ballet companies. Go to the ballet. Sometimes it's not as affordable to go, but consider going to even one performance a year is it's really good for the ballet companies, especially in the United States, where ballet companies are nonprofit organizations. They're actually losing a lot of grants as we speak. So it is really important for people to keep going to the ballet. You can support your local ballet schools by trying a beginner's ballet class yourself. Instead of going to the gym one day, try going to a ballet class and see how you feel. It's really fun. Adult ballet classes are some of my favorite ones to take, even though I dance professionally. I love adult ballet classes. for parents out there, talk to the teachers before enrolling your kids into a ballet school, because unfortunately, a lot of ballet schools want to get your money more than they actually want to educate the kids in the art form. So be careful. Talk to the teachers, get a sense of the school, and yeah, get a sense of what they do in the everyday, how their performances look like, how much you have to pay is really important. Keep watching, keep reading, follow dancers on social media. There are good conversations going on in terms of, again, diversity, body, racial, and gender, the three of those. There are unions going on. New York City Ballet actually is on strike. They're not getting paid. So there's a lot of things going on in the ballet world today. And of course, there are dancers seeking artistic freedom. There's still defections going on. Cuban dancers are the most prominent ones. Dancers also fleeing the Russian ballet companies because of the war with Ukraine. So yeah, a lot of things going on, but there are a lot of positive things that we can take from ballet. And with that, I'll open for questions. I know this is literally, I took an hour and I thought I was going to take about 40 minutes, but I get taken away. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed and that you learned something new today. If you have any questions, let me know or put them in the chat or just speak if you want. Jazz said in the chat she saw La Film Margarde. I love that ballet. Um, it's very funny. And Swan Lake is your favorite, yeah. Katarina, very important. La Bayadere is an imagination of India. Yes, and that's why I said a lot of cultural appropriation there. Okay, so Katarina asks, seems like there was more body shape diversity like in the Soviet era than now, slash modern Russia at least. Is that accurate? Yes. Actually, the one who started to change, at least for female dancers, the expectations for how you should look and the skinny ballerinas, etc., was actually George Balanchine from, the Georgian dancer who went to found New York City Ballet. It actually started mostly in the 70s, 80s, 90s. He demanded a lot from his female dancers. And it really comes from there because as you saw, yes, in the pictures, there's a lot of more body diversity, absolutely, before. And it's not really until Balanchine that we get a little bit more complicated in terms of expectations, unfortunately, because yeah, it is really hard if you don't look a certain way. That's why I said there's a long way to go for more body diversity in ballet. Yeah. Any other questions? Let's see in the chat. All right. Let's see. Roger says, I've always admired ballet dancers and they're beautiful, fit and crazy strong bodies. It was nice learning. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Really, I was really nervous and I thought I was gonna go over time. And actually is just in time, just an hour. Thank you so much. Keep the conversation going. If you have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them in private or, chat here in Accepted Society. Thank you. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for listening to me um, rambling about my obsessions with ballet history. Thank you so much, guys. Have a nice day.